There has been this controversy, ongoing scandal. The DOJ, the Department of Justice, has filed charges, as far as I understand, against the Southern Poverty Law Center. Listeners will be familiar. That's a kind of, I guess you'd call it a civil rights legal outfit that keeps a check on white supremacist groups in America, hate groups, and so on. And there is this scandal that apparently some of its donors' money was going into some of these groups, at least to the extent of funding informers within those groups and not being entirely open about it. It can be a bit hard to untangle, but do you think there's something telling about this scandal? What might it tell us about, I guess, modern left politics?
Well, I think this is a very funny scandal to some extent. I mean, I know people tangentially that are involved in it. The SPLC, yes, is one of these American outfits, U.S.-based outfits. They get money from around the globe that really rose up to combat old school racism during our political and ethnic clashes in the 1950s, 1960s. The Southern Poverty Law Center was started by Morris Dees, and yeah, their goal is identifying hate groups, launching lawsuits against hate groups. They've done impressive things in the past. They've bankrupted entire Klan outfits. One of their buildings that they work out of used to be the headquarters of the United Klans of America, which is fairly badass, quote unquote. I mean, they're lawyers, the preppy black female attorneys and so on are working at the desks of the old Kliegels and Grand Dragons and other, amusingly named people. But again, the most dangerous period for a radical movement is after you win. So once the Klan was bankrupted, once the Civil Rights Act was passed, I mean, many would argue there's not much for the SPLC to do. So over the past 20 years, they've devoted themselves to fundraising. I used to get a circular in the mail. And they've maintained this list of hate perpetrators in the USA, which again, as we've moved left, as we've gotten wealthier, has expanded dramatically to include people who in no way are affiliated with traditional racism. My good buddy James Lindsay is on the list for anti-trans statements or something. I'd have to recheck his profile, but they've got a nice hidden shoulders pic of the guy on there. I haven't made it, possibly because I'm black, so it's harder to call me a Nazi. But Chaya Reichik, lives of TikTok, pleasant Jewish American woman, she's on there. Ann Coulter. So, I mean, this is what they're doing right now. And it turns out that they're doing something else. In fact, a great deal of their money, as you mentioned, is going to groups that they identify as hate outfits. And they argue that this is to fund informants within the groups. But this isn't a police agency, so they don't get anything out of that except articles for their webpage. A cynic might note instead that what they're doing is providing a tenth or whatever it was of the funding for these groups so that hate can continue. Because obviously the SPLC has no basis for drawing in money unless there's a substantial amount of American hate. And I mean, to give a couple of these, I think it was the National Alliance, the combined group of white nationalist groups, got $1 million from them. They were the largest single funder of the Ku Klux Klan that I've been able to identify. Might be an article you guys want to do, but it was $73,000 and at least one check, I think 2, went to the KKK. Wow. And they could say, well, it went to our informant, the president of the KKK, but that money is fungible, as we see often with Israel, Gaza, so on. So this is money's flowing in directly. A few more checks of this kind, but actually quite a few more checks of this kind. They gave $270,000 to the people that organized the Unite the Right rally, which was the Charlottesville riot. And that was a substantial percentage of the funding for that event, as I understand. So what they say is, well, we're paying these people to tell us what right-wing hate mongers are doing. What I think a lot of people would say is, well, what you're probably doing is funding these events that allow you to keep fundraising. So, I mean, the year before Charlottesville, the SPLC had a slow fundraising year. They raised about $50 million, which is a slow year for them. This is a very large group. The year after Charlottesville, they raised $133 million. So, I mean, if you want to look at it in the most cynical possible way, they made a $270,000 investment. That led to some bloody rioting between left and right. And now you can say, well, look at what a mess this country is. There's bloody rioting between left and right in the street. Well, yeah, because you paid for it. So this is an entertaining scandal. A lot of people are looking at this. The reason that we're talking about it is that Kash Patel actually had enough of it and indicted them. So the FBI, this isn't hypothetical, anything that we're saying. The FBI launched an 11-count indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center and said, well, even if you guys are paying informants, it's radically illegal to mislead your donors, to say that money is going to things, libraries in the South or whatever it was, and then to give it to the Ku Klux Klan. So there's nothing legal about that, and we're going to go after you. Last thing, but they also apparently set up these Enron-style companies. The way the Enron fraud worked, as you probably know, is that Enron executives set up separate, basically fake shell businesses that did business with Enron. So the company would do things like trade a $20,000 block of gas futures or a worthless piece of swampland to one of their companies, in Darth Vader Ltd. Or whatever it was. And the company would then sell that back a year later for 50,000, you sell it back for $1 million, and so on. And gradually you accumulated billions of dollars worth of these just useless assets. And the SPLC apparently was doing something similar, where their shell company would give money to the Klan, and they would then publish a piece containing the names of specific Klansmen that were revealed to them by their informant who'd just gotten paid. Some of the informants themselves were written up on the SPLC website as, very bad men, capital V, capital B, capital N. So it's a funny scandal, and the government's going after them for various fraud and malfeasance charges.
Yeah, it is a funny scandal. Worth saying that the SPLC says that the story is very different to the one that we're being told, but we will see as this plays out. You describe very well how this could be a kind of money-making exercise by groups like the SPLC, but do you think there's a kind of moral imperative as well? Because I'm thinking about some of the stuff that you've done on Jussie Smollett, for example, our favorite hate crime faker. And you've written about fake hate crimes on campuses as well, because I guess when victimhood or suffering becomes the social currency of the left, and not only of the left, but kind of in social spaces in society, being a victim is the way you move ahead, get funding, etc., etc. Is there a possibility that this is like an institutional version of that, where you create hate in order to give yourself a moral mission in life?
Yeah, I think that's what we've both been implying. And as you said, that hasn't been proven, but they will literally get a chance to tell it to the judge, right? I mean, they're going to be in front of some no-nonsense Southern jurist pretty soon. Yeah, I would tend to suspect that that's what happened. So the usual motivation for a hate crime hoaxer, a few of them are just insurance fraudsters, but the usual motivation is to quote unquote call attention to a real problem. I mean, I found this in a huge chunk of the cases I was looking at. Here at the University of Michigan, we have an extreme problem with racism, so I'm going to call that out by falsifying an incident, sort of thing. Now, the question, of course, would be, if you did have a huge problem with institutional racism at the University of Michigan, why were there no real hate crimes? Very often with a lot of these colleges that I looked at, every incident that was unpacked that occurred on campus, when I unpacked it, turned out to be fraud. On one occasion, and this actually was a trans-identified woman, but the person in charge of some kind of campus anti-hate agency was going around the campus posting flyers that said things like "trannies go home." So there was an institutional component to this. I don't know whether that was approved or not, but we are going to demonstrate how bad we are, and then we're going to take action against the badness. And the
Yeah.
person responsible for the badness is the person in charge of the action. Yeah, there's quite probably some of that. The one piece that comes to mind is an article that I read years ago in a business class about volunteer firefighters being very prone to set fires. So if you're a voluntary part-time firefighter, the two things you do are, one, go to work at Walmart or whatever your regular job is and make $10 an hour, one, and two, be a firefighting hero. And most of these guys do get paid, so make maybe $25 an hour putting out blazes and getting cheered by the ladies of the town. So there's a strong incentive to drive the fire truck instead of just schlep off to work every day. And when off, these people often go up into the hills and set things ablaze. So it's the same kind of thing now. Like, if your job is putting out fires, even in this case, if they're social or spiritual fires, there have to be fires, or you just have to go home and become a country divorce lawyer again. So somebody's probably going to make that fire happen. Awkward, incentive-based, but real.